Welcome to the Dunelm Technology Podcast. Each episode, we're going to be looking at a different topic to do with technology. This week, we're talking about career frameworks. I'm Matt Brading, one of the principal engineers here at Dunelm, and this week I'm joined again by Leanne Orton, and for the first time by Debbie Thompson. Welcome both.
Hi.
Nice to have you on the show. Let's jump right into it then. So what is a career framework?
Career framework is something that defines and supports colleagues' career development and progression within an organisation. Career framework would outline kind of the various roles, the levels, the skills and capabilities required, and provide pathways for career advancement. But what they do provide, and certainly what we've found really beneficial within Dunelm Technologies, is the transparency. So, the transparency is really important to enable colleagues to see where any gaps may exist and what they need to do or what they need to focus on to progress. So, if effective, a career framework will also support colleague engagement and retention, so allowing businesses to retain their key talent and support business growth, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. From a manager's point of view as well, it gives a good sort of snapshot of, for us as a chapter, we can see quite quickly across our offering in business analysis here, what skills are at, where the gaps are, training needs, how we can maybe pivot to support those that have a higher skill in some competencies compared to some that need support. So it bridges that gap for us as well.
There's always been an understanding to some extent of how people flow through their careers. Obviously, it's a bit different for everyone, but this is sort of, making it more visible to people what that looks like and helping them evaluate where they are on their journey and what they need to do to progress, which I think is really helpful.
I think it also, for me as a BA myself, it helps sort of celebrate our craft a little bit as well and sort of really showcase what the profession can do. So bringing in terminology that's sort of known, the standards, and sort of helping to shape and show the business and the organisation what we can do. And I'm sure the other chapters around have got a similar sort of view that they can sort of showcase the skills of what their people have got and what we can bring.
As you say, it's that guide making it visible, but you do have to be clear with people. It's not necessarily fixed, as in, everyone's career journey is different. So it might be that they get to a certain point and they veer off horizontally, but it's good to have that, that framework there that they can refer to and see what's going on. What are the difference between career progression and promotion?
Well, arguably, any career move is progression. So it doesn't just have to be kind of progression up the corporate ladder. It could be sideways moves. So any career move is progression. Sideways moves can support career growth just as much by providing a breadth of experience or broadening an individual's outlook and skill set. So, but in Dunelm Technology, what we have done is differentiated between progression and promotion, mainly to provide clarity. So our framework breaks roles down into 3 bands: junior, mid and senior. If a colleague moves up a band, so for example from junior to mid, that is classed as progression. So the individual is progressing within their role but remains within the same job level. Across Dunelm we have 5 job levels. So we've got support analyst, professional, senior manager, head of and director. So if a colleague was to move from, let's say, a software engineer, which is at professional level, into a principal software engineer or a software engineering manager, which sit at senior manager level, then they would be moving up a job level, and that in itself would be classed as a promotion, let's say. So the job level has changed. There's a difference in benefits as well. But primarily, as I suppose from a Dunelm perspective, we've tried to provide clarity to some of the terminology that we use. So we have called out the difference between what we class as kind of progression versus a promotion.
Progression is within role, so how you can sort of expand and grow your skills and your competencies, and then almost then applying them when promotion opportunities arise, as in there's a role available and it's an opportunity to move that way. And I think some of the transferable skills element comes in there as well. So a little bit what you were talking to a moment ago, Matt, that there could be some synergies in transferable skills, and again that can sort of be worked at across the teams.
What's good to sort of call these out is, for some people, they don't necessarily want to go, say, up that ladder into managerial roles. So if they view it as the only thing available to them is promotion into being a manager, or management level, then that sort of puts them off. I like what we've done by having those bands, the in-role bands, so that they have a sense of progression within a role, that they can focus on developing themselves and pushing themselves forward without necessarily having to step away from the role that they enjoy doing. And I think that's really good to call out. And I know we've been a bit cautious about the junior, mid-senior from engineering, because there's been a concern in the past about, though if those are different roles, then it tends to be that there's less of a flat structure, that the seniors of the team tell the others what to do. And that's something that we wanted to avoid. So having it more as a in-role progression, and it's more about developing yourself, seems to work quite well.
As we were designing the framework, and one of the questions that did come up was, well, if someone is classed or assessed as being a mid or a senior, let's say in your example, software engineer, does that mean that they have more seniority over a junior? And the answer is no, absolutely not. So the purpose of the bands, junior, mid, senior, is purely for development purposes, so that an individual can see kind of where their skills and capabilities are assessed and lie today, and therefore and also what they need to do to progress to the next level. So the job title is a software engineer as well. It's not you're a junior, you're a mid. It's purely there that sits in the background, so a colleague understands where they're at with their development, and as I say, what to do, what they need to do to progress to the next band.
And I think that is important, because at other companies, they do choose to go for the model where seniors are higher up on the hierarchy. But I think we really encourage everyone to have that equal voice, and pull together as a team, and that's more what we're interested in from that point of view. But it's good to add back in that sense of personal progression. So that is nice to have. And I guess the other benefit of doing it that way is that in-role progression is easier at times than promotion, because sometimes with promotion you have to have headcounts become available either by people leaving or by new roles being created, whereas in-role progression is a little bit easier for us to support as a business, because you're not necessarily waiting for someone else to move on in order for you to be able to step up to be the next level.
If we look at and again, your chapter, just as an example, so software engineering, we've got around 80 software engineers, and so having the development bands of junior, mid and senior, as I say, individuals can see how they are progressing within that role, as opposed to, I've been a software engineer now for X amount of time, I need to move on to the next role. Actually, if they can see how they're developing and how they are progressing within their role, the different capabilities that they're developing, etc., it certainly helps with individuals knowing that they are progressing in the same role that they're doing today.
I guess we've touched on a little bit of this, but why did we introduce a framework? What was the reasons behind it?
I think for a long time it was almost a bit like an unwritten rule, wasn't it? We kind of had some details together, but we needed to be more formal and sort of make it transparent and open to everybody. And again, we were getting recognition and sort of comments back to say that, you know, this was really important to colleagues. So we wanted to sort of act on that and produce something that was relevant and sort of up to date for the business needs as well as the individuals themselves.
So I suppose just to expand on that. So, I mean, Debbie's been at Dunelm probably longer than I have, probably about 6 months longer than I have, but certainly in the time that I've been here. So Dunelm Technology has doubled in size over the last couple of years, and so we've now got around 420 colleagues, I think, across all disciplines within tech. And some of the insights, some of the feedback that we've gained, whether that be through colleague engagement survey or exit interviews, just as an example, highlighted that colleagues couldn't see how they were progressing within their roles and careers. So, you know, as mentioned, we've got a flat structure, so it was important that colleagues could see how they're progressing in role, together with the technical capabilities that they were developing. So, and as we know, you know just as much as anybody, or both of you know just as much as anybody, that opportunities to learn and grow is really valued within the tech sector. So, you know, we needed to find a way of giving colleagues visibility of how they are continuously learning and progressing. So I think, that, you know, the function, as I say, doubled in size. We needed to make sure that we were giving that visibility, we were being transparent, and that colleagues knew that their development was just as important to us as anything else. So I think it was a natural progression, not progression as in that progression, but it was a natural evolution of, you know, the growth of the function, and therefore the people practices we needed to have in place to make sure we were retaining that talent.
It's good because it was something that people have been asking for. It's always, you know, helpful when you're introducing something like this that there's that demand there for it. That means that people are going to invest into it when it is available. I think as you say, that within tech across all disciplines, you know, we're keen to see people progress and grow, because it means that there's more that they can offer back. There's more ways they can contribute. But I think also a lot of people in tech have that personal desire to progress and grow. And I guess by having the career framework there, we make it clear to them how they can progress, when without it there, it may not have been obvious, and they may have been thinking, maybe I need to go to another company because, you know, that's a progression, if they didn't see an obvious way of progressing here. And obviously what we would love to happen is to you know, keep people and support their growth here at Dunelm, because, you know, the more time that you invest in people, the better for everyone. And you can't beat that, not only experience in the career, but experience at Dunelm. You know, it means it's just better for everyone. But it's been helpful for me as a manager as well to be able to have that conversation with people, to help them understand where they are in their career, with a bit more clarity. So it really facilitates that conversation.
Definitely, and I think, you know, certainly, you know, Debbie is a BA manager, obviously within the BA chapter, where we've launched the framework, and hopefully, without wanting to put words in your mouth, Debbie, hopefully, you know, managers can see, leaders can see the benefit of having those frameworks, and then having kind of regular progress conversations, and actually having a framework to support those conversations. And it would also enable colleagues to kind of evidence their development, and provide just examples as well. So it's definitely, yes, whilst it's there to support colleagues with their progression, it's also there and a massively useful tool for our leaders as they are supporting colleagues to progress.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can tailor those conversations as well, because as you say, not everyone will naturally want to progress through. But I do firmly believe as well there's something in remaining relevant and up to date in your craft and what you're doing. So that there's ways to work those conversations as well, to say this is sort of how we do analysis, is how we do engineering, these are the standards, you know, how can I help you to keep that fire going and to keep relevant, to keep being really good at your job. And that's perfectly okay. You know, you can tailor that versus someone who wants to actually go more people-led or more technical-led. You know, we've got those routes to explore, and then to sort of bring it home as well, that it's a continuous thing. You know, we will evolve the framework as we go along and learn, but at the same time, the colleagues can sort of tell us new trends, new things that are coming up, new techniques that we need to think about, trialing it, you know, and living and breathing it a little bit more, and then also using it in the real world. So it's not just about learning and ticking a box, say, yep, I've done that. It's okay, yes, you need to learn it, but then you also need to use it, apply it, and sort of bring it as part of your everyday. There's the 70-20-10 rule that we use quite a lot in our BA chapter, to really make sure that, you know, you're educating yourself and you're understanding it, but then you're actually exposing that skill and then using it and experiencing it in the day-to-day. And again, the framework we've got with the different levels as well to sort of help us to say, okay, how do we break that down into a meaningful goal? It might be that you just actually need to have some education first of all, because you have no idea what it is. It's a brand new skill. So let's just focus on that, make that smart and achievable. And then next time when we go round, it's like, right, how can we apply it? It becomes a lot more meaningful and an open conversation.
You sort of worked together with a group to put together the first one of these career frameworks for Dunelm Technology. When you were going about designing it, what resources did you use as inspiration for how to do it?
I would have to say other organisations where I've worked previously, and kind of taken some of the best practices or some nuggets of what worked really well in previous organisations. But we also looked at what other businesses had in place or what they were doing to get a flavour and to use as a starting point. So there was a really great resource available called progression.fyi, and you know, that's a collection of public and open source career frameworks from some of, you know, kind of leading organisations. So I certainly, because we all brought different things to the mix or to the party, I looked at that in quite some depth. But what was really important was that when we were looking at introducing the framework for Dunelm Technology, was that we designed it with our culture and our values and our behaviours in mind. So that was absolutely fundamental as a thread, really, that had to run throughout it. But we did take bits from frameworks used in businesses such as Monzo or Dropbox. I think there was Amazon, GitLab. There was some kind of really useful insight and bits that we thought, actually, kind of based upon where we are within kind of our maturity as a technology function, that would work well for us. Debbie, as you say, you were instrumental in introducing and designing the framework. So were there any other bits as well that you want to call out?
It definitely sort of bring in my experience from the field, you know, working in teams, you know, software engineering teams myself, and then coming through the ranks and the various frameworks and flavours of frameworks that I've experienced over my different sort of employers rather, and then sort of bringing that together with, I should say, almost the Dunelm flair on it, and how we can make something that was scalable across technology. So once I think we had the framework of the framework, if you like, so knowing that we really wanted to focus in on the technical capabilities, that's where the domain side come out. So I worked with my colleague Nick Walker before. You know, we really thought about, you know, what is core to the craft. So for me, it was following the requirements life cycle as part of the business analysis skill set, and then mirroring it with a framework that we have for behaviours in Dunelm, and then looking strategically as well. So everything sort of just came together through sort of collaboration, experience, a bit of trial and error, some blood, sweat and tears, some feedback, constantly running sort of workshops with my BAs themselves. What do you want in the career framework? What would represent you and recognise what you do day in, day out, and what would you want to do given a magic wand? What would your career framework look like for your future as well, and sort of pulling all that together and making it sort of accessible for everybody and something that would work across the board whilst reflecting sort of nuances in some specialisms that we do have.
There's lots of information out there on what other companies have done that you can use as reference, but it's that tailoring it to your business and to your chapter and to the individuals that you have and where you want to see them go is the most important part. Because if you just copy paste from another organisation, it's not going to work as well for you.
No, colleagues won't resonate with it. They need to be able to see themselves in it. Whether that's I'm here, I want to go here, or I recognise that tool, we have used that before. That's a skill set I've heard of. I want to develop that. So there needs to be an anchor, a hook for them to think, yeah, that's my craft, that's my profession that I do, and this is how I apply it in Dunelm and sort of serve technology and the customers and stakeholders we work with.
So if we go back a little bit, what was the process that we used to design the framework, and who was involved?
Debbie and a few others from within the BA chapter were almost kind of the spearhead or the catalyst for it. So they'd already started to design something for the BA chapter, and then I guess I joined the team in terms of the conversations and kind of really emphasised how this could be what really should be something that was tech wide, so that we needed to make sure it was scalable. But whilst it's a corny phrase to use, I know, but we were really mindful throughout that we were co-creating with colleagues and also with the subject matter experts, because we had to make sure we'd got individuals from within each chapter and each specialism involved in kind of ironing out or certainly establishing all of the different capabilities and skill sets that were required within each area. But it was important that we built it with the colleague experience in mind. I think that's something most businesses sometimes don't do as well as they perhaps could, and it's something that we were really mindful of, that yes, we're building a framework and this has got to certainly develop colleagues and kind of support kind of the business results, but this needs to be built with them in mind. But yeah, Debbie, because as I say, you were instrumental in it. Is there anything that you'd add?
When I first joined Dunelm, it was something that both myself and John Burgess, our head of chapter, were really passionate about, and we felt there was a need to sort of document and get out there for our analysts so they knew what was required of them, where they could go, opportunities and all that good stuff we've already mentioned. So it just felt a bit of a no-brainer. It's like, this needs to happen. And as we were talking and more we're starting to get some things documented down, it's like, actually, this could go bigger than our chapter. This is something that could benefit more than business analysis at Dunelm. So hence why we then sort of started talking with Leanne and sort of pulling in that bigger set, that pool of expertise, got data engineering on board and sort of using some of their skills in some of the templates we were creating, and learning development, we linked those guys in, because a big part of this is, okay, yeah, this is where you need to go, there are your gaps, how do I fill them? How do I go out and get this experience, this exposure? So learning development were very key in those conversations as well. And then we just share our work, talk to it around technology and the different specialisms that weren't initially sort of on the roll-up, but now they are, and sort of make it more open to everybody to say, look, this is something that with the right foundations can be used across the board, but can still reflect your specialisms and your your craft and skills.
I helped with the engineering chapters framework when it came through, and I think we were the second chapter to adopt it, and obviously heavily influenced by what the BA chapter had already laid out. And I think it made the process much easier for us, because it's easy to take something like that and just adapt it to the needs of your area, your chapter, what, you know, the different technical skills, the different takes on the behaviours. As we said, Dunelm has a set of behaviours, but how those look to different people might mean slightly different things. So it certainly made it easier for us. And I know that the other chapters that are looking at it now are sort of taking that work on. So it sort of is evolving as it goes. But it does seem to have done the job in terms of being something that each area can take and sort of just tweak it a little bit to what they need. But it means all the chapters ultimately have the same style of framework, the same rough plan. Yeah, exactly. So it should be familiar. If you were to move, say, from engineering to business analysis, then you'd have a similar framework that you'd recognise.
And again, those transferable skills come in. So if you've sort of highlighted a few things on your personal skills matrix, whilst they might not be specific on another one, but the behaviours are there, the underlying sort of skill and elements of applying that is there. So it's again an open conversation to look at moves should you want to as well.
What was nice as well, bringing in the different areas, it meant we were able to get something that appeared a lot more mature, because it was well rounded. We had the good foundation in terms of what the role needed, but for example, learning and development really helped to support in terms of providing good documentation to colleagues about what the career framework meant, and putting some more detail in there, and also making it available and clear to people, you know, where they needed to go to find this information, making sure everything was there for them to track it. So it was nice to see that sort of group come together.
It will evolve. You know, we know it's not a silver bullet, but we also know that it's an excellent foundation to start that conversation, to make it more open and transparent about what you want to do next, and then we'll work together and evolve it as it needs to.
Once you had the framework in place, as you say, the foundation for it, how did you go about rolling that out, and how did you measure the success of it?
The measurement of success is ongoing, because the rollout's still ongoing. But because of the scale of because of the size of Dunelm Technology, we've approached it in a number of phases. And the first phase that we've just kind of come to the end of was we'd identified all roles that we class as high volume roles. So where we had, let's say, one role, such as a software engineer, but multiple people within that role. And that's where we focused our original efforts. But we were very deliberate in rolling out the framework in bite-sized chunks. So ordinarily, I think it's fair to say, with some people initiatives, you can take quite some time to kind of build something and then implement it, and by the time you've implemented it, it may longer be delivering the value that you want it to. So we made a very conscious decision to deliver in bite-sized chunks, which for us was kind of maybe 1 or 2 chapters at a time. And then what that enabled us to do as well was to test and learn. So effectively, what's been working well, what's not working so well, what can we tweak to improve and evolve this. So we've been very deliberate with our actions, and we're now just scoping phase 2 and what that looks like.
We had like a rollout plan, so we made sure that all the relevant material was in place. The chapter was aligned and ready. We had a sort of a big kick-off, so everybody got the information at the same time. I think that was really important to us as a chapter, that it was sort of acknowledged that this is a big thing, but it's a big thing for all of us all at the same time. So let's go on this journey together. And Leanne sort of came to that and helped sort of share those messages. So again, we were then consistent. So when it came to engineering's time, you know, what we learned was then cascaded to those guys. And we held retrospectives as well. Like, this is how it's gone for us in the first few weeks. You know, this is the types of conversations we're having. This is how people are using, engaging in the skills matrix and things like that. So sharing and sort of giving advice along the way as well. I know I've sort of jumped into calls with people to say, okay, yeah, have you thought about this? Try this element, you know, does that work for you guys? And just sort of working together on it as well, really. But just the main thing was just being all together at the same time to have that initial conversation, then having dedicated time with each individual to walk through what it meant for them. And I think that was really key in it landing, and people understanding how they can use it for them and where they are. Because as we said at the start of this podcast, you know, not everyone wants to progress, but everyone knows what they want for them out of their role. So then that gave time to have those individual conversations to say, what do you think? This is where you think you are. This is where I think you are. You know, that's your baseline. Where would you want to go next? You know, and then conversations evolve and plans and development plans come together to bridge those gaps accordingly. So yeah, I think a bit of everything, which is obviously a very open answer, but you know, that's success for us. The fact that we've had that conversation as a group, we've had it individually, people then bring that to the table in their one-to-ones going forward now for us to say, I've got this skills, I really want to move it up a notch, what do you think? I'm like, yeah, absolutely, how are we going to apply that? And it starts that conversation.
I suppose two obvious measures that we will be using, kind of one links to the engagement survey and the growth section that relates to learning and development, and certainly seeing any movement, hopefully, that will be positive. But then also reasons for leaving and the conversations that we have with colleagues during exit interviews. We try, or we certainly aim to capture as many colleagues as possible without that sounding as though we have a lot of leavers, because we don't actually. Our attrition is excellent, I would add. But there are definitely two measures that we will be using to measure the success. But having regular feedback loops with colleagues to make sure, or to ask the question, you know, is this delivering what it set out to deliver? And I think that that's really important. And now that, as I say, we're probably through the first phase, that embedding of what we have introduced is going to be really fundamental, and to capture that feedback so that we can continue to evolve and improve the framework.
When we were rolling it out in engineering, we made it clear to the people that were doing it, the engineers, that it was still, you know, something that would evolve, and that their feedback was welcome. You know, it's important to make clear to people that this isn't something that's fixed and they don't have any say over it. It's always tricky with something like this because it has to be developed by a smaller group of people, and obviously we try to include as many people as we can, but you can't include everyone in the company. So there's always going to be that process of, when you roll it out, finding what worked well and what didn't work well. And I think just encouraging that feedback from the start of saying, you know, how are you finding this? Is it, you know, the skills matrix, for example, we have to put together not only what we think the key skills are, but what they look like at the various role levels. And that's something that can be hard to do in isolation. So you sort of need to see how it applies. You know, someone who you know in your mind, you think they're at a certain role, when they score themselves on this, did they score what you expected them to or not? I think it's good to just keep that open feedback process there, and be very, very explicit about the fact that we welcome that feedback, and this framework is there for the colleagues to use. So that's why we really care about what they think about it and how they find it. I guess the tricky side of it is it's a long-term investment in a way. So to the areas we've rolled it out, we've gotten that first snapshot of where people are at, and we're starting to have the conversations about how we can progress them, what it looks like. But it'll be interesting to see, I suppose, in 1 year, 2 years, how people have found it in the long run. Has it helped them to progress? Do they see a marked difference from where they started, or has it plateaued, or has it not been relevant? Obviously, we hope it has been, but it'll be interesting to see over the course of time.
Yeah, for sure. And I suppose thinking about it, skills within the tech space, it's a volatile environment. It's a fast-paced environment, so skills and capabilities are going to change over time. So we just need to make sure that the framework, that the contents are always current and relevant. So which is why that gathering that feedback and making sure that it's delivering what it's supposed to deliver repeatedly is going to be really important.
I suppose in a way it's a bit like the painting of the Golden Gate Bridge as well, that once we roll it out to all the chapters, we're probably going to come back around and see what needs to be tweaked in each one, and just keep it evolving and living, so it, as you say, it doesn't fall behind the reality of what colleagues are dealing with.
Absolutely, and what the business is dealing with as well, and what the goals are that the business wants to achieve, and how our people can help us get there. Have we got the right skills to do that? Is there something brand new coming that we need to align people to and sort of help them develop to help Dunelm achieve what they need to do? So yeah, absolutely, it does need to evolve, and things change, technology changes so quickly, so we need to make sure that we're up to date for our people.
And what's the feedback been like so far from the areas of the business that we have rolled it out to?
Well, I'm going to throw that right back at you, because you're one of the chapters where the framework has landed, well, to both of you. So, software engineering, business analysis. So I suppose, how have you found it as leaders, and what are you hearing? So I'm now becoming the interviewer.
I don't think we agreed to change roles there. I guess that's fine. It's been, I think, quite positive so far, and I think it goes to show that involvement of making sure that we involved people who it would be relevant to, and people that had good experience of it. So you say it's hard sometimes for these kind of initiatives to really resonate with the colleagues, but because it has that direct link to them, it has done. And I think we've set it up in a way that makes it quite simple for them to understand it and to get involved in it. So, for example, because the way we've built the skills matrix, they can look at a technical skill. So, talking about engineering, maybe it's their front-end programming skills, and we have descriptions of what that might look like at different levels, and so they can just read it and see which one of those do they feel sounds like their ability, and that makes it really easy for them to score themselves against all the technical skills. And what that meant is we got to a point where they were telling us as managers where they were, which was really nice, actually, because I think it really helps for them to be bought in, to say I've scored myself and I think I'm here, rather than me as their manager saying I'm telling you you're here. And obviously we had conversations, but most of the time I found that people were really honest with themselves, and I think that reflected the fact that they're keen to use this as a source of their progression. So you have to be honest with yourself if you want to do that. You can't just say I'm maxing out everything, because then it's no benefit to you. But yeah, it's been useful. Obviously, there's been a few points where there's been some feedback about what hasn't worked as well, and it'll be interesting to see how we might adapt that in future. Just as an example, I feel, and it might be for engineering largely, but the technical skills people found really easy to score themselves on, but the behavioural skills weren't quite as easy, because it's not always as black and white with behavioural skills. It's not how well can you build something. It's much more nuanced. But it's definitely, I think, been quite positive so far. What about you, Debbie?
Yeah, I think I'd echo a lot of what you've said, Matt, to be fair. I think initially, it was like, this is great. You know, it's the first time I've actually seen something written down where I can see where I'm at, what I need to do next, and sort of showcases the value that the business analysis brings to any organisation, let alone to Dunelm. So they were just genuinely quite grateful at the start to think, okay, we've actually got something, we can go after this. And that feeling of being recognised for the skills that they have, I think that was really quite key, especially in some of my personal conversations I've had with my team. You know, they were like, I like this, I can see where I am now. And then having that conversation, well, what do you mean by that? And sort of challenging me back as well, because we know it's not perfect. So, you know, that feedback loop was like, well, what do you mean by that? So having those definitions, a bit like you said, Matt, you know, and saying, well, this is what we mean at Dunelm and how we want to use it. And also sort of bringing in some other tools and techniques. So we've got sort of the standards that we use, but then there's also these elements as well that you could potentially try just as a refresh and to maybe ignite a conversation in a slightly different way to get, you know, a deeper, meaningful requirement out, just as to expand that toolkit that we've got, you know. So it's sort of giving those opportunities and a bit of sort of what's the word, a bit nostalgia, you know, seeing some of those techniques going, oh, I remember that, I've not used that in a while, what, you know, and sort of bringing some of the sort of core business analysis foundations out and saying these still exist, you know, they're still really good tools. They're not relevant in every case, you know, so we sort of adapted slightly with feedback and had a Moscow priority sort of on some of those tools as well, to say, look, you know, in this area of the business, you're probably not going to get a chance to use this as much. So this is probably a should rather than a must for you. And that's where the personal element came in. But like for our data engineering tribes, you know, entity relationship diagrams are really key, you know, but maybe in other areas of the business, they're not so key. So we adapted it and flexed it that way as well. So yeah, a chance to sort of bring some old favourites back, you know, and sort of mix up the pot a little bit to get different, more diverse conversations going in our requirements solicitation. And that initial, oh, yes, we've got something. But now it's like, right, okay, you need to use it, you know, own it. It's your career progression. I'm here to cheerlead you all the way and help you plug gaps and create opportunities for you. But what do you want to go after? What do you want to drive? And how do you want to progress? And that's where I think the beauty of it comes out, you know, when individuals are engaged in using it.
Really important to capture that nuance. Like if you're going about building it, even within a chapter, there's a lot of variation in what people are working on. So you have to make sure you take that into account, that a skill that's going to be critical for one person in one team may not be relevant at all to someone in someone else. And you've just got to keep that in mind. I think the other thing that I've seen, and you know, we might cover some of you know, the way Dunelm gathers feedback and how we work on it. But I think this has been an initiative that's shown people that the feedback they do give does actually get listened to, because it came out so clearly in a survey, probably for a few years, but I know at least the year before you went and designed this, that people were really craving that. And sometimes when we send out engagement surveys, ask colleagues for feedback, I know they can be, you know, you wonder what's the point sometimes, because if you don't see any action on the back of it, it's hard to know what happens. And certainly, you know, when you're lower down in the business, if you're not a manager, you don't see what is happening. But something like this, where there's a very clear demand for it, and then here it is, I think it really helps people to understand that that is valuable, the feedback they give, and that we're listening to it and that we're going to act on it. So I think I've seen an improvement in that engagement in the feedback process.
And actually, that's probably a good segue into a future podcast that we have planned to talk about the Engageathon. So, yeah, good segue there, Matt.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So we'll hold that one for another day. But
hold that thought.
I think but it's been really great hearing about the career framework. I'll put in the show description that link to progression.fyi. So if people are interested, they can go and look at that and see what other companies have done and get some inspiration from that. But yeah, that's it for this episode. So thank you both for joining me and taking some time. And we'll be back soon with another episode.